All right, let's finish this off so that I can go to my next set of projects. This is the Queens neighborhood tier list. I'm not going to do one for the Bronx or Staten Island just because I don't know the neighborhoods as well and I don't really feel qualified to speak on them. So, first neighborhood is Ridgewood. Ridgewood is probably the cool neighborhood in Queens that you hear about when you first move to New York. It's going to be either Ridgewood, Bed-Stuy, or Bushwick if you're moving into that sort of Brooklyn, Queens area. And for good reason, it is a spot with a big art scene. It's like a cool scene of younger people that have sort of more of like a leftist vibe to them. But Ridgewood also, what I love about it is it still feels very family oriented because you've got these single family houses and it's still kind of quiet relative to the rest of New York. Ridgewood has kind of the best of everything. I would put it in the A tier. There's really not a lot of bad neighborhoods in Queens. What I love about Queens is that it's kind of one of the last affordable places in New York City up until the 18 people who watch this video decide to move there. But anyway, next spot is Long Island City. This spot has been gentrified to all hell. It used to be a bunch of warehouses and industry, and you still do see remnants of that, which I do really enjoy. And a lot of that industry is becoming abandoned, but I do love like the little cobblestone streets and stuff, the little side streets and alleys over there. It is a fun neighborhood to hang out in. It's still coming into its own, it's still building an identity. Because of gentrification, the prices there are kind of insane, but they also are actually building housing, which a lot of neighborhoods just straight up are not doing. I have good memories of just sneaking into those construction sites back when they were construction sites and not fully developed buildings, and just kind of getting a nice view of Queens from 40 or 50 stories up, just a sort of a unique skyline looking over Manhattan, which I really like. And I do love the Pepsi Cola sign there, just the waterfront. I love waterfront spots a lot. I would probably put this in the B tier. The next one is Astoria. Really, really a lot of love for this neighborhood. I love the park space that's by here. I love the fact that you can go under the train line where it's kind of chaotic, but then a few blocks away, it's pretty quiet and family friendly. I love that you can see the Hellgate Bridge and then a little farther out, the Triborough Bridge. A lot of good memories around there. Great scene for restaurants, great scene for bars. It's not my scene, but hookah lounges are out there. It used to be mostly like a Greek and Italian neighborhood. Now it is gentrifying quite a bit from last I've seen. So despite that, it's still for me goes in the S tier. I really have a lot of love for this neighborhood. I am a little worried about how things are going to turn out for it because it seems like a lot of people are going to get priced out of it soon. Next neighborhood is Sunnyside, a lot of great food there. Queens is really a spot that I think of when if you want to go to some great restaurants that are still low key and still affordable, and you want to get some ethnic cuisine from a certain country, you end up going to Queens. And another thing I love about Queens is it really represents the best of the United States in terms of diversity. It's the most diverse place on earth as far as cultures represented and languages spoken. Sunnyside, it is sort of bumping up in price lately, but generally speaking, fairly quiet neighborhood for the most part. Another great thing about these Queens neighborhoods is they tend to be fairly low crime for the most part. I would put Sunnyside up in the A category. The next one is Forest Hills. Really, really beautifully designed neighborhood. If you look at, I'm not really sure what the style of architecture is called, but this style of housing, it's kind of unlike anywhere else in New York City. And they really want to preserve that. In some places, it is a little insulated, but it is just such a peaceful neighborhood. And I love that it's right by Forest Park, which is really cool because it goes by the freight tracks, and it's also a great spot to watch the leaves change in the fall. Forest Hills has this kind of like sleepy suburban feel to it, but at the same time, it's very dense, just like a New York City neighborhood. You go down Austin Street and you hit up all the restaurants and such there. Yeah, Forest Hills is a place where if I get older and end up having kids and end up having money, I could easily see myself having them live there and just kind of leading a peaceful little life. I would put it in the A tier. Then the next one is Jamaica. So, Jamaica, Queens, I kind of have bad associations with Jamaica because I always associate it with you just came from the airport and then people are just trying to sell you weed on the street, which is fine, but it's like I just came from the airport, dude. Like, give me a fucking break. Jamaica has like some nice housing in little pockets, but overall it's got kind of like this fairly industrial vibe, which normally I mesh with, but it's not like there's a lot of abandoned buildings or really places for me to go out and see there. I don't really know that there's a huge food scene out there. I think the crime may be a little higher as far as Queens neighborhoods go. So overall, Jamaica's all right, but that's really all I can say about it. If someone wanted me to go there, I would be like, fine, but I would have to have a pretty good reason. I'm going to put it in the C tier. Okay, so next up, I'm grouping Eastern Queens kind of as its own thing because these neighborhoods just get so similar. St. Albans and Queens Village and Cambria Heights and Hollis and Holliswood. I really don't find a big distinction between these neighborhoods, honestly, aside from whether or not the Long Island Railroad runs through them. These are where it starts to feel very suburby, where it starts to feel very Long Islandish. And I don't really like the Long Island vibe. I don't really like the fact that it's mostly chain stores out there. And it is suburban, but not interesting. Like Forest Hills, at least the neighborhood for sure has some character and things that make it distinctly Forest Hills. If you ask me to give some defining characteristics of Hollis or Queens Village or St. Albans and to compare them, I truly couldn't tell you. And that's probably from a lack of spending time in those places, but I genuinely don't even see a major difference between them. Don't really love the suburban vibe out here. There's nothing really there for me as a young person. I would rank it in the C category. I'm going to group these together once again just because I find them so similar and so close together. Whitestone and Bayside area. I know there's going to be some nuances and the differences between them, but generally speaking, I kind of treat this as just one unit. And yeah, what do I have to say about it? Again, I love waterfront spots. I love anywhere that feels very peaceful, generally speaking. I love anywhere by bridges. That's always a nice view, anywhere with a good amount of park space. It's not a very diverse neighborhood as far as Queens goes, from what I recall. It's got some peaceful houses, but there's really not a lot to do out there. And that takes some points off of it. So I would put it in the B row. Next Queens neighborhood is Flushing. Flushing is really the spot to go to if you are just visiting New York and you want to experience Queens and you want to get a taste of what it's like, because you've got Queens Chinatown out there. New York City has three major Chinatowns, one in Brooklyn, one in Manhattan, and one in Queens. But what I love about the Queens Chinatown and Flushing is it's not just Chinese food. There's all kinds of cultures that are represented here, whether it's Korean or Thai or Cambodian or even, let's say, Tibetan food, right? You can get momos. They've got the Tibetan parade out there, and that becomes a very big thing. I'm a big fan of Chinatowns, generally speaking, for their affordable food. And I just love Asian food generally. And Flushing also has some kind of cool industrial pockets that for me are worth seeing. For most people, they wouldn't care, but I kind of like seeing that little edgy side to it as well. For me, Flushing would go in the A row. Next one is Jackson Heights. This, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think this might be the most diverse neighborhood on earth. This is a spot where you've got Venezuelans living next to Sri Lankans, living next to Irish people. And this is a spot where I can go and I know that there's going to be a 24-hour taco stand under the 7 train. And I know that they're going to serve 5 small tacos for $5. And you are just not going to find prices like that anywhere else in New York City. It's just impossible. This neighborhood is really all about the food. A lot of Queens neighborhoods are all about the food and restaurant scenes, and especially in Jackson Heights, it's about the food truck scene or just the street vendors. That's going to be the number one thing that you would see there. And I'm not sure I would live there myself. It is a little hectic. They're always so lively. They've always got stuff going on till like 3, 4 a.m. Big Hispanic scene out there. A lot of them love to party. And it is kind of an insular scene. It's like you have to kind of be in the know in order to join those sorts of scenes. But if you can, I'm sure it's a great time. I would probably say it's maybe an A- for me. Next one is Rego Park, kind of a peaceful neighborhood, does have like this suburban feel to it. You can see by the mall that's here, not a very big mall person, but I do appreciate and respect any neighborhood that is affordable. It's really just kind of your meat and potatoes kind of neighborhood, honestly. I would give it a B-. Next one is Woodhaven. You can tell by the photo I've chosen here, Woodhaven is maybe not the most exciting neighborhood in Queens. If I think about Ridgewood, if I think about Long Island City, if I think about Astoria, those are neighborhoods with distinct characteristics. I think Woodhaven doesn't have so many distinct characteristics. It's just like a very diverse working class neighborhood. Maybe they've got a cool restaurant scene, but if they do, I certainly don't know about it. There's not really a big draw for me to be there. And so for that reason, I put it in the C category. Next one is the Rockaways. I'm just going to treat the Rockaways as kind of like one big unit. I know there's a difference between Breezy Point and Far Rockaway, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, it is all kind of just one long thing. Far Rockaway is kind of like the hood in Queens, essentially, as close to that as you can get. A lot of Section 8 housing. My grandma used to live out there in those sorts of houses. So I do remember first time visiting like Crown Fried Chicken and all those kinds of spots, getting like a popcorn chicken bucket. I was 13 years old, just checking out this end of it. So I never felt unsafe there. It's just kind of like there's really nothing there for me because I'm not a beach person, I should probably add. So if you love the beach, it is a spot to go to. I would say Jacob Riis Park is really cool. I really love Fort Tilden and all the abandoned structures that are out there. And yeah, they've got like a topless beach out there. What I don't love about generally the Rockaway vibe is it's got kind of this like Republican feel to it. It just feels very conservative on one end, and then on the other end, it's the hood, and it's just not a great mix. And then you've also got the very insular Breezy Point. I've only really been there twice in my life, but people have been friendly to me there for sure. But it also feels like I'm not supposed to be there, honestly, because you've got to go past a gate and all this stuff. So it is kind of like an odd vibe in that way. There's a lot to see there. If you're a beach person, you would probably rank it more highly than I do. It does have one of the nicer beaches of New York City, I do have to say. But overall, not for me. I'm not a beach person. I would rank this in the C tier. Next one is Howard Beach. That one is not even really properly a beach. This has more of the feel of those little Brooklyn peninsulas that I talked about in the Brooklyn tier list video. Long history of just not great race relations, let's say. They do have a great pizza spot that I remember eating at there. But again, it is just such a car dependent neighborhood. There's a ton of corporate stores. There's a few local businesses as well, but I really hate any spot that's designed with really wide roads and such. A little conservative for my taste, not really for me. I would put it in the C category. And then I'm kind of combining these two, Briarwood, Middle Village. They're okay. That's really all I can say about them. The housing is pleasant enough, the rent is fairly inexpensive. This place doesn't really have a huge scene of anything, and that's fine. Not every place needs to have a scene, I would say. But because of that, there's nothing for me there. But I always give credit to any sort of affordable working class or middle class neighborhood, because that is getting so much harder and harder to find these days in New York City. I would probably put this up in the B tier as like a B minus. And so that's the Queen's tier list. As you can see, there's not really any bad picks over here, nothing that I would rank in D or F, because I do have a lot of love for Queens overall. Whereas other neighborhoods in other boroughs, I would definitely rank a lot lower. I think if I made a Bronx or Staten Island tier list, it might kind of resemble the opposite of this as far as the curve. All right, that's the Queen's tier list.